Hey guys, do you want to talk about religion? Wait, where are you going? The Last Church is a short story written by Graham McNeill in 2009, making its debut in Tales of Heresy, a small collection of short stories centered around the Horus Heresy and pre-Horus Heresy eras, with a well-made fan film soon to follow, being animated by Tiber Portuguese, and you and your stupid f***ing last name, being animated by a guy in turn. The story centers around the last priests of the Last Church still on Terra, after the God Emperor of mankind has outlawed all religion. In his final days, he's visited by the Emperor himself in disguise, who wishes to convince the priest to join his cause, as well as catch a glimpse of an era of mankind that will soon be gone forever. The story's been received with mixed reception over the years, though not as controversial as some of McNeill's other works. The Last Church has been the subject of minor controversy over the years, and by minor controversy, I of course mean a bunch of neckbeards arguing about it on Reddit. Now, given that I'm coming into this as one of those stinky neckbearded Reddit atheists, let me clear this up real quick. I'm not going to be reviewing religion, or Christianity, or your own personal beliefs in general. I'm going to be reviewing the 40k internet fan film, The Last Church. I honestly really don't care what you believe, as long as you're not an asshole about it, and don't say silly things like, you know, the rates these immigrants are coming in, there aren't going to be any white people left in this country soon. And, good lord, those wacky round earthers over there are really harshing my vibes. You know, things you might potentially say, as I am also not a professional, or an expert, or really a person who knows much in general. I am not qualified to tackle some of the subjects covered in this film, and I don't have to talk about it if I don't want to. If you want to center your Last Church video around a religious debate, you go right ahead. And haha. We open on an extremely foreboding shot of Uriah, our protagonist for this evening, who's having a busy night of staring off into space and slipping into madness. Now, I take this scene to imply one of two things. For one, the sounds of war and violence stop the second the God Emperor shows up, which, given what we end up discovering later on in the short, could definitely symbolize Uriah's trauma being kept at bay by the practice of his faith in what turns out to be the Emperor himself. However, the fact that we don't hear those sounds until right before Big Emps makes his appearance, as well as what we know ends up happening in the setting, could also symbolize the war and suffering that he's literally about to bring with him to Uriah's doorstep. Uriah welcomes his new guests at the Church of the... I'm sorry, what does he say?
Welcome to the Church of the Fulgur Lapis.
Right, so Uriah welcomes him there, and if you mention that name in this house again, I'll wash your mouth out with soap.
I am Uriah Olothair, last priest of the Church of the Fulgur Lapis.
My name is unimportant. However, you may call me Apocalypsis.
I'm sorry, what was the Emperor's incredibly subtle fake name? The guy who wiped out all churches on Terra is named Apocalypsis. Apparently in the original short story, it was Revelation, which is more subtle, I think. If you're gonna change it, you could have at least gone with something more creative. Like Corvus Corax, like Ferris Manus, like Rabute Gelman, like Angron. Oh my god, they're all terrible, aren't they? Every single 40k name is absolute trash. Like Jimmy Space.
I simply wish to talk to you. I wish to learn what keeps you here when the world is abandoning your beliefs in gods and divinity.
That being said, the voice actor does perfect with his portrayal of the amazing atheist. He sounds intimidating, dignified, and somehow patient at the same time.
I have only ever seen mortal men accuse anyone of blasphemy. Were reactions to the accusations any less violent, I would label it a victimless crime.
I can listen to this guy put planetfuls of people to death and then turn around and read me a bedtime story, and his voice could easily fit both.
Read me a story. Fine. Chapter 1.
which for someone hyped up to be as charismatic, socially aware, powerful, as well as downright confident as skeleton guy who wants to die makes complete sense. I've seen a lot of complaints online about Emps being portrayed with too much sympathy here, but A, this is literally the last church on Earth, and Carlos MC is just trying to enjoy an important part of our world's culture before it gets snuffed out forever, and B, he's not an idiot. Just because he has the ability to barge in, order his Thunder Warriors to seize everything, and start loaning out storage space from Trays in the Infinite doesn't mean that he's necessarily going to. The Emperor, by his very nature, is a pretty difficult character to get right, especially pre-Horus Heresy, because the Emperor really isn't the kind of character you would normally focus a story on.
I'm the dude. So that's what you call me, you know?
This is a guy that's been around since the inception of man and whose actions have pretty much single-handedly shaped the entirety of the setting up to this point. Also, the fact that there have been multiple writers working on his character for almost 40 years at this point means there are going to be some inconsistencies. Like, one second he's like, why would I save Angron's adopted family? Dumbass dreadlocks wearing murder hobos. And then he's like, my dearest Horus, I wish not to fight you. Beat me into a skeleton instead. And then he goes, hey Thunder Warriors, you like Star Wars, right? Ever heard of Order 66? Shortly after, of course, being all,
You are right, of course. I'm being discourteous, and I apologize.
but then he goes, child soldiers! I want them with steroids and Wheaties. I know they've kind of retconned this, implying that the Emperor knew half his sons would turn to chaos, informing his mindset from the start. Come on. Do you really think they're gonna follow through with that? That it's not just a hasty patchwork justification trying to explain away how years and years of storytelling from multiple different perspectives has warped the lore into a giant bowl of plot spaghetti? Oh, I get it. It's a metaphor for the setting. Then Games Workshop must be the Inquisition. Sorry, that comparison was way too easy.
You wish to join us tonight? I don't recognize you.
No, I don't expect you would. Nor would I expect us to be anyone besides you and I.
I am Gandalf, and Gandalf means me.
Even though the voice actor for Uriah sounds a bit young, he also does a fine job with his character. By the end of the story, you really end up feeling for and identifying with this lonely, scared old man, which is informed a lot by the voice actor's performance.
I had not thought I had aged so poorly as to scare so many away.
It is rare to find a man like you with a sense of humor. I have found that most of your kind are dour, leaden-hearted men.
My kind?
Are you calling me a straight white man?
What revelations do you search for in my humble church?
I wish to learn what keeps you here when the world is abandoning your beliefs in gods and divinity. I wish to understand why you have yet to turn to the faith of science.
So the Emperor throws down his fedora and his God is Dead t-shirt, challenging Uriah to a dance-off, challenging Uriah to a religious debate to decide the fate of the universe. This church. We'll split the difference and say Terra. Uriah responds with a resounding, okay. The artist even threw in a nice-looking shot of the Emperor's favorite kill cam, with a stained glass portrait of him slaying the Void Dragon.
The great fresco of Isandula. A divine work.
It is quite magnificent, but divine? I don't think so.
Fortunately, the Emperor is spared what probably would have been a pleasant, normal conversation with a regular human by going, everything you believe, it is all bullshit.
I do not seek to diminish the artist's sublime work through allocating praise upon a greater being. Her artistry does not prove the existence of anything. No god has ever created art.
In an earlier age, some might have considered such a sentiment blasphemy.
I have only ever seen mortal men accuse anyone of blasphemy. Were reactions to the accusations any less violent, I would label it a victimless crime.
By the way, if you're wondering who's actually right when it comes to this first debate, it's both of them. The mural was technically divinely inspired, seeing as it was based on the Emperor killing the Void Dragon, but only in the most technical sense, and definitely not in a way that either of them would agree is divine.
Well, this has been an interesting discussion, but you must excuse me, friend Apocalypsis. I have to prepare for my congregation.
No one is coming.
Okay, you know what? Get out of my church.
Why are you really here?
This is the last church on Terra. History will soon be done with places like this, and I want a memory of it before it is gone.
He then says, Look, I obviously don't have things to do, but I do have wine to drink, so you have to leave by dawn.
Say what you will, but come sunrise, you will leave and not return.
And Apocalypsis responds with, oh, I'll leave alright. Leave forever. And then Uriah goes, okay.
And yours.
You have a fine appreciation of wine, friend Apocalypsis. My father gave this to me on my 15th birthday. I was a devilish rogue back then.
A devilish rogue turned priest. Sounds like quite the tale.
But before we can proceed to the fun part of the video, Ems takes this opportunity to talk some shop.
Even in your isolated state, you must have heard of the Emperor and his crusade to stamp out religion and belief in the supernatural.
I believe what I believe, and no amount of hectoring from some warmongering despot will sway me.
That is an obstinate point of view.
That warmongering despot probably has feelings. You can see Ems brainstorming the penitent engine in that shot.
Do you wish to see the church?
I do.
Then come with me.
And the plot moves forward from there. Uriah escorting the Emperor down to the church cellar to see his vulgar rabbits.
Fulgur Lapis.
Uh-huh.
The Fulgur Lapis.
That's just a stupid boulder.
It's not just a boulder. It's a rock. A rock. A rock.
Also, I did some research, and apparently the term Fulgur Labis translates literally to lightning stone. So it's literally the Church of the Lightning Stone, which adds another layer of irony to Uriah's hatred of the Emperor's Thunder Warriors.
Thousands of years ago, a local holy man who was blind was walking in the hills hereabouts when a sudden storm came in over the Western Ocean. He hurried back down to the village below, but it was a long way, and the storm broke before he could reach safety. The holy man took shelter from the storm in the lee of this stone, at the height of the storm in the lee of the heavens. When he thought all was lost, he was lifted up and heard the voice of our Creator. The holy man returned to the Fulgur Lapis and instructed the townspeople to build a church around it.
I like the plot thread of Uriah showing Apocalypsis all these priceless and irreplaceable historic artifacts as a motif for his argument. It hammers home the tragedy that not only is Big E gonna burn it all down, he's presumably already done so to literally every other church on Terra. The origin of the Fulgur Labis is a great example of this. The point of the story isn't to persuade Ems or even the reader one way or another. The point is that that story and others like it are part of humanity's identity, and wiping that out just so Big E can literally fuck around with human nature is a fool's errand.
Hematite from a banded ironstone formation, exposed by landslip during the storm, most likely. That would explain the strike.
It was our Creator's will. And if your explanation were to substitute mine, the nature of the event is still what I would call a miracle.
Actually, I didn't think about this until a good way through writing this video, but if we're having a big theological debate discussing the nature of mankind and how we fit into the universe, where do the 4 omnipotent space Satans fit into that argument? And it's for that reason I don't think an actual theological debate works within the framework of Warhammer. If you take the events of the Last Church by themselves, the Emperor is painted as a power-hungry, egomaniacal dictator with good intentions at best. And this is a completely accurate take. Wiping out religions treated like wiping out a part of the human experience. Also, look at these big bad Thunder Warriors causing trouble. Clearly Big E is in the wrong here. Except when you remember that when religion gets out of hand in our universe, people die tragically. When religion gets out of hand in Warhammer, literal portals to hell are opened. Yeah, no, I'm with Ems on this one. I've taken a look at what the Word Bearers have been up to, and frankly this universe needs a few less skin loincloths to go around.
I have heard tales of a similar nature in the Far East. A young girl claimed to have seen a holy vision of a woman while bathing near the springs closest to her home. Bathing houses were established there too, but for fear of diminishing the rate at which the owners of the bathhouses could admit pilgrims, the waters were only changed once a day.
Well, that's kind of gross,
The
but...
dying and diseased came in droves, passing through that water in the hundreds every day. So I'm sure you can imagine what a horrible slop it was at the end.
Okay, thank you again for that visual.
They were but pools of blood, sloughed off skin, scabs, bits of cloth and bandage, an abominable soup of...
Okay, God, stop. We get it. Well, I don't think Emps's specific example is based on real events here. Given the fact that the Ganges River is more corpse than river at this point, it's not like there isn't a real-life precedent to draw from.
You think that the way we perceive the world is the way it actually is, but you cannot perceive the external world directly. Indeed, none of us can. Imagine your holy man sheltering from the storm in the cover of this great stone when the lightning bolt hit, the fire and the noise. Isn't it possible that an already religious man might perceive sights and sounds of a divine nature?
Okay, counter-argument. Your best friend is a wizard.
Why can you not concede at least to the possibility of such an explanation?
Because I too have seen my god and heard his voice.
Where did you receive this vision?
On a battlefield in the lands of the Frank. Many, many years ago.
You must have been a young man back then.
I was. Young and foolish.
And where in Frank did this miraculous vision take place, priest?
On the killing field of Gadwere.
You were at Gadwere. Will you tell me what happened?
I'll tell you what happened.
So Uriah finally delves deeper into his backstory, while at the same time realizing, wait, I have wine to drink.
The water of life.
And now that I've pissed in this cup, onto the wine.
Finally, spirits both you and I can believe in.
Give it a minute.
There's a great moment that shows the difference in Uriah as well as the Emperor's personal philosophies with the opening of an old wine bottle Uriah had been saving. Uriah wants to sit and savor the wine, appreciating its value for what it is, while Emps just wants to hurry up and get to the booze.
And how long must we wait?
Patience, friend Apocalypsis. This wine has sat for many decades. It can sit for a few more minutes. Feel the aromas and how they stimulate your senses.
Representing how Uriah accepts humanity and loves it for what it is, flaws and all. While the Emps is so occupied with the future and moving forward, he forgets to notice what's literally going on right under his nose.
Why is it you carry a timepiece that doesn't function?
It is a family relic, you see. It has been with us since before even Old Night.
The priest then delves into the backstory of his family watch, citing its ability to tick only before major end crisis disasters occur in the setting. That thing must be ticking overtime then.
I check it often, as if it could warn me of danger.
Ah, that's a flavor I have not had in a long time. I didn't think any remained.
It is an old bottle, one I rescued from the ruins of my parents' home.
It's my parents' ashes, actually. I've been up on this mountain a long time.
My story has not yet even begun. We've waited long enough.
Uriah regales the Emperor about his youth. Back in the days when it was no longer nighttime. I'll take my writing Emmy now. My Nobel Prize for writing. Back when he was a young Bart Simpson delinquent. And we find out Uriah's been sporting the same Snow White haircut since he was an actual child. Which is bold.
I was born in the town below this church, nearly 80 years ago. My clan had come through the final years of Old Night with much of their wealth intact. I wish I could say I was treated badly as a child. You know, to give reason for why I turned out the way I did. I cannot.
Yeah. I'm just gonna say, animating an adult head onto a child's body does not make for a child's head.
I was indulged and became something of a spoiled brat. Looking back, I realized what a little shit I was.
We see Uriah had the typical rich kid's life growing up. Booze, women, and an armored retinue to see you around the world. 1%er.
Anyway, I decided in the adolescent fires of rebellion that I was going to travel the world and see whatever free corners of it remained in the wake of the Emperor's conquest. I left that very day and crossed the Silver Bridge 4 days later, traveling across a land recovering from war.
As Uriah travels the world, we get a scope for just how far the Emperor's power reaches, with just about every site and every corner of the earth falling underneath his Aquila, with the priest already noticing the effects of the Emperor's great gentrification.
Hammers beat out plates of armor. Blackened factories churned out weapons, and entire towns of seamstresses created new uniforms for his armies.
Uriah eventually comes across an encampment of Thunder Warriors, and promptly gets piss-blind drunk before having an impromptu poetry slam about how much he hates the Emperor.
I called them many names. Freak. Slave. I even told them the Emperor's only goal was to enslave all of the human race to his own towering ego.
Presumably right before telling the Space Wolves about how much he loves his Thousand Sons homebrew chapter. And not having sex with animals. The results are about what you would expect.
I was monumentally drunk. I felt invincible as only a drunk and a fool could. The sheer power of each soldier was never made clearer to me than when that giant came over to me and lifted me up, tearing my shirt and upsetting me greatly. I screamed at him to let me go, and he did just that.
Very poor choice of words.
Telling me to shut my mouth before tossing me off the cliff and into the sea.
I like how the Thunder Warriors are depicted here. A lot of people tend to hone in on the— oh yeah, Uriah survived, by the way. Spoilers. A lot of people tend to hone in on the tragic part of their lore, you know, where the Emperor stabs them in the back at the height of their accomplishments. But you gotta remember that the Thunder Warriors were somehow more aggressive and stupid than your average Space Marine, and also prone to ignore orders more often. These were basically Fallout Raiders that got ripped apart and stitched back together with Dark Age of technology that also had a tendency to literally fall apart and die at a moment's notice. And Grant McNeil does not shy away from that fact, so Uriah swears vengeance over his ripped shirt and dedicates the next years of his life to not paying taxes and plotting to overthrow the Emperor. Well, if there's anything Batman has taught me, it's that the power of money beats the power of being a literal god every time, so go for it, buddy. That Folly Took must have given him a knock on the head as well, because Uriah also joins the 30k Terran equivalent to the Imperial Guard, survival rate included. Uriah returns to his home in the land of the Frank, implied to be literally just France by the Battle of Cadouane. The country goes through a revolution every other week, and the fact that Frank is literally just France spelled without the E. He travels to the town of Aberoy,
What was that, Kruber?
Just trying on a Bretonian accent for size.
whose population is sheltering an outlaw accused of assaulting and murdering the town's previous governess. Well, I say accused, let's just say the glove definitely fit here.
Without unity, and without the Emperor, there would be no human race.
So really, you should be thanking the Emperor, and also maybe pay your taxes.
Oh, I see it all right. I see that very clearly. The devilish rogue did not, however.
There's that word again, devilish. I know he's a priest, but someone's got a bit of a crush on the devil, huh?
A hastily formed militia had stormed the local army headquarters and seized the weapons within. By the time I reached Averoy, full of piss and vinegar for the coming fight, Havelek had rallied a number of the local townships to his cause and amassed quite an army. Within the week, we had amassed an army of nearly 40,000 strong.
He said it! He said it!
Anyway, Ulfric Stormcloak here manages to convince the town that 40,000 ill-trained rabble militia can surely take down the Emperor, all 20 regiments of Thunder Warriors, probably the Custodies at this point, and for all intents and purposes, the rest of Terra single-handedly. So they march out to the battlefield.
You must have known it was madness to engage the Emperor's armies. I mean, you had no hope of defeating them.
We were so full of hope, of optimism, we wouldn't allow ourselves to even consider defeat.
And this is why you always allow yourself to consider defeat. Granted, 50,000 strong against 5,000 standing in an open field does seem like an unlosable situation, but as any Total Warhammer player, and Vladimir Putin knows, constantly feeding bodies into a giant angry wood chipper doesn't tend to do wonders for morale. It turns out their commander is also being piloted by Total Warhammer AI, seeing as rather than keep their advantageous position on the high ground, he sends his men charging in using those useless firearms as bludgeons and clubs. This is probably going to end... yeah. However, who knows? Games Workshop's always been awful with numbers, and as we all know from the humble lasgun, if you throw enough mass and manpower at a problem, surely the sheer numbers will be enough to hold out. Surely the can-do spirit of your average unaugmented warrior will be enough to hold back the ceaseless, unending tide of firepower and gene weaponry. You guys hear PFG Division? Yeah, they got the numbers part of the Imperial Guard down, but they came up short on the actually having a plan bit. There's a nice shot here of a Thunder Warrior looking bored and actually kind of amused by the slaughter that's unfolding. There are no good people in 40k, and if they are, they're the lamenters. After a small moment of silence for those fallen, and for the revolutionaries to process what in the actual just happened, madness breaks out as we see the Thunder Warriors go to work. And I'm gonna be real here, this is the best part of the movie. In fact, this scene in particular is why I wanted to watch the animated version instead of just reviewing the short story. As we transition into the Battle of Cadouane, although I use the term battle with quotation marks, slaughter, massacre, blender, take your pick. Even though the action's conveyed through only slightly more animation than Hammer and Bolter, every frame feels visceral and brutal. This is the kind of damage a Bolter round should be able to do. It's like the beginning of Saving Private Ryan, but I can enjoy the over-the-top gore effects without feeling guilty.
Havelek had somehow survived the initial barrage with only superficial wounds. I watched him stare, dumbfounded, as the leading Thunder Warrior cleaved him in two with a single swing with his chain blade.
The devilishly roguish army throws down arms and routs almost immediately, with some even begging for mercy from the gene-spliced warriors. This is the same army that the Emperor put down for being quote-unquote too aggressive, and he let the World Eaters live, so needless to say, mercy is not on the menu tonight. Uriah does the only thing he can think of to help the situation, shitting himself and passing out. To be fair, that's really the only option available. He awakens sometime later, surrounded by the corpses of his former comrades, and are you starting to see why the Thunder Warriors were too dangerous to live?
I never learned of any other survivors. Weak, and laying in a field of human parts, I began to weep once more. The heartache and ruin I'd visited upon others in my reckless pursuit of hedonism and self-interest.
It's at this point that Uriah begins to question if maybe, just maybe, he's been a rich, spoiled prat. But before he can reflect further,
I opened my eyes and saw a golden face above me. A face of such radiance and perfection that my tears were no longer shed for my self-pity, but for his beauty.
a giant figure clad in golden power armor and rocking 80s metal hair strides onto the battlefield. Uriah figures it's either the lead singer for Manowar or literally God, so he elects to go with the latter.
What did this face say to you?
Why do you deny me? Accept me, and you will know that I am the only truth and the only way.
And from this point on in the story, we now have the Chekhov's gun of the Emperor revealing his true nature to the priest, because you know that smug motherfucker's not going to resist that opportunity.
Surely there is another explanation?
You may be wise in many things, Apocalypsis, but you cannot know what goes on in my own mind.
Actually, yes. Yes, I can. That's a thing I can do. Galaxy's most powerful psyker and all that. Uriah is spared what probably would have been an awkward confrontation upon returning home to his rich, presumably atheistic family by the slaughter of his rich, presumably atheistic family, who had been killed by Scandinavian raiders while Uriah was away.
My brothers?
They were all killed by the plague,
My goldfish Goldie?
eaten by the cat,
My cat?
choked on the goldfish.
All I had to remember them by was their wealth, good wine, and this damned watch.
If it is any consolation, the Scandians would not accept unity and were wiped out near 3 decades ago.
I know, but I do not revel in death anymore. The men who killed my family will have been judged by God.
Well, in a manner of speaking, yes. So with no hope and fewer prospects, Uriah goes into town to get drunk, stumbles into a priest, and well, looks like he's now the guardian of the Vulgar Rabbits.
The Vulgar Lapis.
Still don't hear you, and still don't care.
I should have died at Gaduere, but I was saved for a reason. To serve God, to bring his words to the people, to do good where others would not, to be a beacon in the coming dark.
There's a nice bit of grimdark irony here, in that technically Uriah's god does show up, ask him to spread his teachings, and be a beacon for humanity, but because this is 40k and everything has to be grimdark, Uriah actually rejects him.
That is what I've been trying to do, but the Emperor's promulgators traverse the globe with his message of denouncing the supernatural and criminalizing the devout. I assume that is why you are here.
You would be correct.
The Emperor lets it slip that he's representing the Imperium's interest in these matters, and that's his goal to change Uriah's mind to avoid further bloodshed. It's never established in the film whether every priest on Earth was given that same offer or just Uriah for being the last, but it does cast some doubt as to whether the Emperor really is that much of a tyrant and despot, which again, he is, but I like that the author's going for more of a gray area here, rather than going full grimdark and having him turn Uriah into a servitor, making him into a pedophile. Actually, turning him into a servitor would be the good ending in that case. But then plot twist, they employ him at a daycare. Extra grimdark!
This is the last church on Terra, and it falls to me to offer you this chance to embrace the new way willingly.
Or
There is no or, my dear priest.
This shot is animated super well here, with Uriah asking whether the Emperor will leave him by morning, and the Emperor ominously responding with,
It is my sincerest hope that we will go together.
which bodes super well. The Emperor tells Uriah of the once great city of Zoser. Now I know what you're thinking. Somebody sneezed at the keyboard. So the Emperor tells the story of Zoser, a city on the brink of starvation. That is, until some gene scientists start cloning livestock. Unfortunately, a band of fanatical Santa Clauses break in and murder everyone involved, causing large populations of the city to starve to death. Guess Christmas came early for Zoser that year. Bunch of fucking Krampuses. Uriah and the Emperor verbally spar some more about religion.
Where the church is strong, it causes cruelty. Only when faith loses its force can a society hope to become humane and progress. The history of religion is a horror story, Uriah. To appease their vile gods, priests drowned women and children in sacred wells and cut the heart out of their slaves and prisoners. It was never uncommon for religions founded in this region of the world to use their faith to justify conquest without mercy. They guised their political objectives with religious significance by the just and marvelous judgment of God. They exterminated whole towns on the merest suspicion of witchcraft or treachery. When it was all said and done, near 100,000 were dead.
Rookie numbers. Also, I didn't pick up on this my first time watching this through, but there is no way the Emperor was not personally present for all of these events. And again, I don't think the religious debate is actually the point here. Notice how everything the Emperor describes as being wrong with religion literally ends up happening in his own Imperium. You have hatred of outsiders, rejection of science, mass slaughter being justified for the greater good.
Do you truly not recall any secular government that drove itself mad with suspicion of treachery and created a state ruled by surveillance and torture?
And pretty much everything the Emperor proceeds to describe here, which makes me think the point of the Last Church isn't even really a religious debate. The point of the Last Church is, man, isn't it wacky how hypocritical the Emperor is? I think that's literally the whole point. I don't think it's anything more than that.
Anything that divides people breeds inhumanity and cruelty. Religion is the canker in mankind's heart that serves such an ugly purpose.
That being said, the Emperor does come across a bit Kevin Sorbo-ish here.
I hate God. All I have for him is hate.
Religion actively impedes forward progress by producing stubborn people who fear advancement.
With how hard Ems presses the subject, I can see why one would think the author was actually trying to start a religious debate here.
You cannot seriously compare my religion to such barbarism.
Can't I?
You fixate on the blood and death and forget all the good that can be achieved through faith.
Uriah, you only see religion for what it can be. I am seeing it for what it most always is.
I really like this shot here. There's no joke or further commentary. This range shot is lovely. Carry on.
The emotional benefit of religion's power to console the wounded and the dying, as well as those left behind, cannot be underestimated.
Religion's power to console gives it no credence or validity. Better that less would die due to the removal of religion than each zealot die with a smile on their face.
Maybe, but when my time comes, I will die with God's name on my lips.
Are you afraid to die, Uriah?
In 40k, that's a trick question. Uriah eventually realizes the cardinal rule of arguing with Reddit atheists. The argument never f***ing ends. So he tells Apocalypsis to get out so he can pray sulk.
There is no one to hear you.
I don't care what you say anymore. You listen to my words, but hear nothing. End the charade.
Very poor choice of words.
As you wish. No more games.
So it's revealed, surprise surprise, that Apocalypsis was the God Emperor this whole time, and also the divine being that Uriah saw in his vision, which is a bit to take in for the poor guy.
Now do you understand the futility of what you do here?
You are the Emperor.
I am.
I like the effect they put on the Emperor's voice here. There's only so many ways you can make a voice sound mystical, and having both a high and low-pitched voice talk at the same time is always a classic. There's also a nice little detail of Uriah's old head wound getting healed, seeing as it's somewhat faded in this shot and we never see it again afterwards.
It is time to go, Uriah.
Go where? There is nowhere else for me in this godless world of yours.
Embrace the new way and be part of something incredible. A world and a time where where we stand on the brink of achieving everything we ever dreamed.
I will miss this place.
It's okay, we'll get you a new church.
A better one.
A better one.
That one.
What one? That one.
Now, let us be on our way.
So sadly, the church is torched, centuries worth of history, art, and culture being completely erased in an instant, as a metaphor for the last vestiges of a mankind without the Emperor's influence is wiped out. At least we get a cool shot of Uriah standing in front of the burning remains of his entire life's work. It's at this point that the Emperor starts to come across as less godlike and more alien and sociopathic. Considering when Uriah tearfully asks him why all this was necessary in the first place, his stone-faced response is to go,
Some things are best forgotten.
I hope you have foreseen the consequences of a world bereft of religion.
I have. It is my dream, an imperium of man that exists without recourse to gods and the supernatural.
He leaves out the part about the four space satans trying to diddle mankind for their own devices, but with everything Uriah has to process here already, that's probably for the best.
It is my dream, an imperium of man that exists without recourse to gods and the supernatural. There is a place for you at my side, Uriah.
You could babysit Lorgar. Me knows he could use a good dad.
My entire life has been altered by, at best, a misunderstanding. At worst, my life has been spent following a lie. But you know what? It doesn't matter that my life has been one massive falsehood. I came here with my heart open and emptied my grief. The spirit of my god had entered my soul and filled me with love.
Uriah decides that even if he spent his entire life following a lie, at least it was a lie served in a good cause, which is probably the best takeaway he could have walked away with here. His heartfelt speech about choosing to believe in a higher power despite a lack of faith, while not really resonating with me as an atheist personally, having it overlay these frames of all the church's religious symbols being destroyed was an excellent decision.
I have spread a doctrine of love and forgiveness. No amount of words and tricks may change that. Even now, despite this revelation, my heart is filled with love. I see no reality in which your goals do not lead us to disaster and ruin. Beware your subjects do not begin to see you as a god.
For example, the laurel wreath you're wearing. Does that help? So Uriah politely turns down the Emperor's generous job offer, instead electing to commit suicide by throwing himself into the burning remains of his church. Well, let's give Emps a bit of a break here. Sometimes you pass your speech checks and sometimes you accidentally push half your sons to chaos. This was one of the latter situations.
I wish only the best for my people.
I believe you, Apocalypsis. But I cannot be a part of it.
The last scene shown in the film is shot entirely in a somber quiet, with the Emperor turning to a new dawn, leaving the wreckage of the old world behind him. He walks away with his Thunder Giants, who will soon be given the same treatment, as we then transition to Uriah's broken pocket watch, previously mentioned to tick only when disaster is about to strike. As the Emperor leaves to damn the galaxy, the watch strikes midnight. Time is up. So that was the last church, and as far as internet debates about religion go, it's actually extremely entertaining and worth your time. Did it completely change my perspective on life? No. Did it convince me to go back to church, start praying, and, I don't know, eating lettuce? That's a thing morally good people do, right? They eat lettuce. Let us kneel and pray. I did not write that. That was improvised. I just want to go on record. I did not actually plan that thought out beforehand, commit it to paper, and then just go ahead and put it in the video. I kind of stumbled haphazardly over the idea and then put it in the video anyway. Anyway, if you're looking for a well-written story about a lonely priest's life with some sick animation of the Thunder Warriors absolutely carving through cannon fodder that occasionally breaks out into, man, you see this horrible thing that religion's done? It sure would be a shame if the Emperor's Imperium were to do exactly that thing, which is why this film in particular kind of tripped me up a bit, because when you say it out loud on paper, there's not really a whole lot to it, but the way both the Emperor and the priest are written as well as voice acted really helps sell the experience for me. It's on the headier side of Warhammer lore, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. Uriah's backstory in particular had me hooked, especially getting a glimpse at Atera from the post-Unification War era. That was pretty cool. Also, while the backgrounds for the animations are always pretty consistently appealing to look at, some of the frames of Uriah and the Emperor are... yeah. For example, you got this shot with Uriah looking like the world's blindest chimp over here, but there are enough good or even exceptional shots to balance it out that it doesn't really impact the experience that much. And having the story be animated as opposed to being told to us through written form lets the animator sneak in small little details that wouldn't have really worked with the short story. The voice acting, as always for Warhammer, is fantastic.
Go where? There's nowhere else for me in this godless world of yours.
If you're looking for an actual serious theological debate, you're probably gonna be a bit starved here. I'm gonna be real here, I don't see either side convincing the other, in real life or within the format of the story. I give this film 4.5 Norwegian black metal church burnings out of 5. So good, and install the ranking system on my videos. It lurks. Within the deep recesses of my mind. It sits there, watching, waiting. It commands me to follow, and I obey. It leans in close. It whispers sweet whisperings into my ears. And it tells me to subscribe to A Single Spaghetti. Hiya, kids! The reaping season is upon us. And while those crops aren't gonna grow themselves, we need souls. Subscriber souls. Souls to subscribe to A Single Spaghetti. It keeps the nightmares away, and I like it. Anyway, I think that's about as good a point to end off as any, so... bye.